Hello there, and welcome back to Hydroponics Daily, your go-to podcast for everything soilless cultivation. I'm your host, Dr. Russell Sharp, the owner of Utrema Limited. We make unique fertilizers like gold leaf in the US, or liquid gold as it's called in the UK, and many other biostimulants and biopesticides, biofungicides, things like that. Today we're going to be talking about a new type of growing system. There are always loads coming about. People are always designing new systems, so it's always interesting to look at how the engineers are coming up with new and wacky ways to grow plants. And previously we talked about Dyson, the company famous for their vacuum cleaners and hair dryers, and, well, not famous for their wheelbarrows, but that's how they started out. And they had a rotating drum, massive structure in their greenhouse for growing strawberries. And we said that this rotating system meant that it was easier to harvest because you could rotate them around and fit more plants in per square meter, and better use of the lights. There could be lights inside the rotating drum. It was a massive engineering structure, weighed tons, and it was really long. It was industrial sized, large greenhouse structure. And that was a drum on its side, as almost like a rolling pin on its side, flat on the ground. And today we're talking about a system called Revoponics, and this, I think, is an Indian company, but they've installed one at Queen University in Canada. And this is a vertical drum, much smaller scale, so maybe only 50 strawberry plants on a drum that's about 2 meters tall tops, I would say. And it's probably looks like it's been 3D printed, perhaps. Might be wrong, it might be cast. But it's on a greenhouse or a controlled environment room on top of the university building. And they're saying that it's easier for robots to harvest it on the rotating drum. It makes better use of the space and the lights and things like that. Many of the same claims that the Dyson system made, but this one's far more suitable for indoor growing. So imagine a conventional tower system, looks a lot like that, but the towers are all rotating. So that's what makes the Revoponics system different. So it'd be interesting to see if the company behind Revoponics is a success. Let's try and find the name. Agritech. Not the most imaginative name for a company, is it? Agritech. There are two organisations in the UK called Agritech. One is based in East Anglia, and one's a government organisation. So Agritech. But Revoponics, I like the name. Revolving hydroponics. Interestingly, the system it's been installed in Queen's University it was actually a very old system, and it dates back to the 1960s. And that makes it one of the first ever controlled environment rooms in the world, really, because controlled environment rooms only started really in the late 1940s in California Institute. In academia, controlled environment rooms are often referred to as phytotrons. You'll hear this term. If you're in an academic in a plant science department, phytotron just means a really controlled environment grow room, and where temperature is precisely controlled, all the environment conditions are controlled. A phytotron might be a cabinet, a grow cabinet, it's almost like a fridge, but it's not cold inside. It's conducive to plant growth, and there's a light in there. Small, but these growth cabinets are really only for growing small plants, like Arabidopsis, the model plant species. Or you might have a room. You might go into a university corridor, and there'll be phytotron rooms that we can go into. They're very expensive to run, and they're very expensive to hire out if you want to do a commercial trial. I know that. But lots of universities have these. So yes, the Queen's University one is a phytotron. It's been going for a long time, and they'll be actively researching here. Canada, horticulture is very important to the future of Canada. 95% of all Canadian fresh produce is imported, primarily from California and Mexico, travelling thousands of kilometres before reaching grocery shelves. And also because of that, the shelf life of these fresh produce is very low. So it's not just the environmental impact, and 35 to 45% of fresh produce goes to waste because of that long trip. So if you can produce it locally with something like a Revoponics system or a vertical farm, then potentially there's a massive saving. And we talked about food deserts in Canada, where isolated communities, low income or native Canadian population, the I want to say Inuits, Eskimos, whatever the politically correct term is, they often have poor diets, just as they say would the Aborigines in Australia, for a number of different reasons, which I'm not going to go into because it's all political, and we've had enough politics after yesterday's episode. So, yeah, I think this is an interesting system, and I think visually it will look really good to have revolving hydroponics. Even if it doesn't produce commercial crops, it just looks really cool. And if you're a university, having really cool stuff on your brochures and your videos that you can promote to new students and benefactors and research councils that want to give you funding is always good. So, Revoponics, Revolving Hydroponics. Who knew? Thank you very much for listening to Hydroponics Daily. As always, at the end of the episode, I beg you to go onto Apple Podcasts and leave me a review. It helps me shoot up the Apple Podcast charts and helps spread the word of hydroponics to the horticultural industry more widely. And as we come out of summer, all the gardening podcasts will start to fade away and we can shoot up the charts even more. So please do leave a review on Apple Podcasts specifically. Thank you very much for listening. Until tomorrow, goodbye.